Good morning, all. Thank you for coming and attending today's second session in our TruClient Tips and Tricks webinar series. With us today, as always, Shlomi Nissim, TruClient R&D Manager, and myself, Lior, from the cost team. Now, we began our series with the functional overview, our previous session, to which you've received a recording and material already. Today, we will be covering object identification deep dive. Our next session in July 28th will be advanced scripting techniques. And we will conclude the series with a troubleshooting session scheduled for August 2nd. As always, like previous session, we encourage you to ask questions in the online chat interface, but remember, some of your questions may be answered already during the session, so listen and ask in parallel. Okay, so without further ado, I give the floor here again to Shlomi to start our TruClient object identification deep dive. Shlomi, go ahead.
Thank you, Lior. Just making sure that we are recording this session. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for dedicating the time to join this session. Today, the session is going to be focused around object identification only. So please try to focus your questions and focus on that. Basically, in the next session, we will cover some more aspects of scripting, and in the last session, some more aspects of troubleshooting. I know that all these topics kind of mix with one another. So if you have, some of the questions or some of the material is not going to be covered by all these true sessions, then of course we are always open to further assistance and questions. Okay, let's start. So there are four methods of object identification in TruClient. The first one is the automatic object identification, which is also marked as the recommended in brackets in the TruClient UI. We'll see that in shortly. Basically, this method is called electors. Like internally, this is how we call it. It's a patented algorithm which basically allows to identify objects in a different manner than how it is done with XPath or with CSS locators or with property value kind of approach. We will elaborate on the automatic identification method shortly, using a few slides with a few examples so you can get some more sense into it and understand what it's all about. But most of the session and the live demo is going to be focused on the other methods. So you can identify UI elements also with XPath, either using the automatically generated XPath expressions that TruClient provides, or writing your own XPath expressions. You can use JavaScript identification, which basically means that you can interact with the application or with the document model and identify any object using that method. And also, you can use the descriptors identification, which was introduced in 1202. And this is an approach that is basically more similar to UFT, where you can identify an object based on attribute values. So we'll see examples for all these three. But before that, I would like to explain a bit more about the automatic object identification, because this is the more elusive one, let's say. Okay, so electors. Electors is basically a method that helps identifying elements based on attributes and based on some heuristics and scores that are given for each attribute, and eventually also to the all electors. So the electors is basically, we'll see an example for that, how it looks like in the script file in the object repository. But it basically calculates after characterizing the element and its attributes. There is some calculation of a primary score for the element to basically give TruClient some kind of a grade of how strong this identification is. And this grade is actually being generated also during replay in order to compare with the one that was recorded or spied. And based on that, see whether, like, determine whether the element that was identified during replay is actually the one that was recorded. Electors basically compare several elements, similar elements in the page, and decide the uniqueness based of that element based on its attributes. And it's also calculating some secondary score, which we'll see shortly, also in order to provide some method for us internally to determine whether the object during replay is the one that was recorded as well. If there is no attribute that basically describe this element in a unique way, then TruClient automatically tries to find some parent element which can characterize that selected element as a unique one. So we'll see an example for that as well. All of that actually is being done behind the scenes, and you don't have to define anything or do anything on your own. I know that for a lot of you, this is actually a minus because you would like to understand and know what's going on behind the scenes. So as a rule of thumb, I would say as long as it's working, don't touch it and stick to it. The parent object, in case needed, is called internally. It's called the context object. I will just show you shortly how it looks like. And some important note, which is not necessarily relevant only to electors, but for the entire identification types. Whenever you select a UI element, which later on translates into a test object in the script repository, if you selected the same element again from a different step, we will have only one instance of that UI element in our test object repository. So basically, there is a lot of confusion. Maybe I'll show that later, if not today, maybe in the next session. But TruClient will always create one test object for the same element, no matter from how many steps you interact with it. Okay, let's see an example. We have a very simple HTML page over here, only buttons, as you can see. All the buttons are actually have the same caption. They look exactly the same. If we'll see this HTML over here, we see that we have those buttons, same descriptions, and each one of them is actually wrapped in a form, and each form has its own ID, 1, 2, 3. This one specifically doesn't have an ID. Okay, so let's see, like, if we record a script, okay, If we record, someone mentioned over here that the screen is not visible, so let's make sure that there is no technical issue. Okay, if we record a script, apparently there is an issue, so I apologize. Okay, I'll continue. I'm sorry. If I record the script against this simple HTML page, and we selected specifically a very simple HTML page in order to be able to explain that better, because when the page is very complicated, it gets much more complicated later on. So I'm clicking, like during recording, I clicked on, let's say that I clicked on the first button. I get this kind of script, right? Navigation to that page, and then click on that button. So let's see how it looks like in the TruClient script. So before I'll start describing what's going on over here, let me show you on which file I'm looking at. So I'm just from Vuegin, I'm going to one of the scripts that I prepared in advance. And I'm looking at, in the script directory, I'm looking at the default XML script. So, a file, I'm sorry. So the default XML file is basically the file where the TruClient script is being kept. There are a lot of files in the script folder. A lot of them are related to some surrounding functionality or supporting functionality, like, for example, runtime settings, which are being kept in the default CFG file, and the run logic information, which is being kept in the default USP file. Snapshots that are generated are being kept in all sorts of files, but the most important file is the default XML file. This file basically contains the script steps and the object repository. So let's try to arrange that to a more convenient manner. We see that in here we have a section in the script for the test object. And in here we have one specific test object, and under that test object we have several identifications for that particular test object. So this is the test object ID. In that particular case, we'll see that script later. I clicked on some example number or something, and then we have the electors. Each one of these elements over here is an elector, which is the automatic identification. So we have electors in here, and we have also the XPath statement. We have also the XPath statement. We have a couple of them, actually, and we'll see that later on in the user interface. This is the descriptors identification, and we don't see the JavaScript identification here because this is an identification that basically you need to write on your own. But TruClient gives some out-of-the-box suggested identification for JavaScript. We'll see that later. But basically, when I'm going back to the automatic identification, to the electors, this is what we are talking about. We're talking about this identification. So let's get back to the example in order to see what the electors is all about. So in here we clicked, just to remind you, we clicked on a very simple button. We see that button over here, tag name, value, button. We see that each elector gets a score for each elector. And we see that there is also another attribute over here, text. It has a value, the text of that button, and it's also it also has a score. Okay, I apologize. I have to stop because there is an issue with the sharing, and it's marked as an issue with the connection. I'm trying to connect again. I'm trying to share my screen again. I apologize for that. Okay, I apologize. I'll rewind a bit with my explanation. So we have recorded that that button, and we get this part in the object repository. I want to get back to the script, the folder, where I actually described that the most important file is the default XML file. This file basically contains the steps in the script, as well as the object repository where we store all the information regarding the UI elements which are being interacted with in the script. So there are additional folders over here and additional files that are kind of supporting additional functionality. I mentioned regarding the default CFG, which is the runtime settings, and the default USP, which is the run logic, and all sorts of snapshot files. But the steps in the script of the script and the object repository is actually kept in the default XML file. Just one small note: TruClient script is also visible in ViewGen, and in ViewGen what you see is this action.c file. I want to mention that this action.c file is actually a read-only file. It is not really running. It is just a visual representation of the script. We did that in order to give some taste of what the script is doing without forcing the user to really open the browser. But this file is not really running, so you cannot really modify it and impact what's going on in the script itself. The script, as I mentioned, is actually in the default XML file, and the default XML file is basically contains all the steps in the script, which is the one block in here, where we can see all the steps. And there is another block, which is, this is our focus for today, is the test objects block, is where the object repository is being saved. Each UI element is basically represented. Each UI element that you interacted with during recording or spying for an object and so on is represented over here as a test object, and that test object has identification as a unique ID, and that unique ID is being referenced from all the steps that are using that test object. So each test object has several identification methods, as I noted earlier. During recording or spying for an object, the TruClient creates all of them. So the first part is, as we can see, is for electors, and this is the automatic identification. And each elector basically has its own description. This elector, for example, is an elector for image, and we see that the value is dynamic value.png, and it has a score. So each elector gets a score. I will not explain about the scoring algorithm and what each score means. It is less relevant. My goal over here is just to show you that electors is not that frightening. I mean, it is an algorithm that basically relies on attributes of elements and some heuristics. And basically, based on the element and the heuristics, the element gets a primary score, a secondary score, and if needed, some context object. So we'll see that shortly. We also see that we have an XPath identification for the same object, a descriptors identification for the same object, and JavaScript is not automatically generated and not saved over here unless you actually change the identification of a specific object to JavaScript and made it the active identification for that object, and then you will see that also in the default XML file. So let's get back to that simple example. So in this example we can see that we have a button that we clicked on. The button has a text, click me. So it's very simple. We see that this is basically the electors that describe this button over here. And this is the primary score that was selected. 0.465 blah blah, and a secondary score as well. Again, these are needed in order to match the element that is being selected during replay in order to see whether we get a score which is close enough in order to the one to the one that we captured during recording, in order to determine if this is the real object that you selected during recording. So in this case there is also a need to uniquely characterize this object. So if you had to manually identify this object using XPath, obviously it's easy because this HTML is very, very simple. You basically just use this path and get into this element. But using attributes, you had to also add the parent element in order to find uniqueness. So TruClient is doing that for you. And in this case, because it has to be uniquely identified, there is also a context object, as you can see over here. And this context object is basically the form, this form, which basically identifies this button specifically, uniquely, comparing to these others. So the context object element is also appears in the object repository, and it's an object, a test object, or an element on its own. And basically, this is more or less how the automatic identification works behind the scenes. The rest of the session is not going to be dedicated for that, because the automatic identification is kind of, if it's working, then you can use it. If it's not, then we might talk a bit more of how to troubleshoot, other than what I'm going to cover right now. Maybe in the troubleshooting session, but at least today, basically, if you fail to identify a UI element using the automatic identification method, this option in here to improve object identification, this is what I would suggest on using. We saw several cases also with customer cases. We saw that it actually solved things. So basically, if you use that, TruClient compares the description of the element with the one that is already saved in the default XML file in the object repository, and in case needed, it either reduces or updates and merges the changes based on the newly captured information. It might decrease the amount of data saved in the object repository, hopefully to better and more accurately identify that object. In some cases, it might also delete the context object reference in case TruClient realizes that it's not needed. So this is the more common troubleshooting for if the automatic identification is not working. Just note that you don't need to rush into using it, because if the object is being identified properly, you don't need to touch it, just keep it as is. If you will try to improve what is not supposed to be improved, then you might end up in actually getting that object not identified. So this is pretty much it regarding the automatic identification. I'll just mention that in version 12.53, we've added a very meaningful enhancement, which basically it's some kind of a fallback mechanism, which allows the automatic object identification to leverage the other identification methods automatically, XPath and descriptors. And basically, when TruClient doesn't succeed in locating an object using the automatic identification method, it automatically searches that, tries to search that UI element using XPath and descriptors. And in case found, we automatically try to update the description of the elector's identification. And then if we found that UI element right after that, we basically improve it, and we save that data into the repository. And if not, we will prompt you guys to basically switch between the automatic method to a different one, and then you will be able to basically select which method you would like to choose. So this enhancement came as a result of customer requests, and obviously we are very attentive and listening to our customers. So let's move on to the other identification methods. And I'll do that by basically demonstrating that from the application itself. So I'll start with XPath. We'll also see a bit. I'm navigating to a sample site that we have specifically for object identification examples. This site is available from TruClient help files. We introduced that in 12.02 version. The examples in there kind of stay the same. Sometimes we enhanced them, but these are very useful examples. They are available for you also today in the online help. And if you will go and check this URL, you will be able, if you didn't catch anything, or if I add any mistake during the session, so you will be able to see that later on. So you go to TruClient Help Center, and then from the Advanced menu, you choose Examples. And in here, you see this section of using object identification to enhance scripts. So you can see examples with scripts and everything, like how to capture a value to a string. So you see the relevant page on which this script was recorded, how to do that using descriptors, how to do that using JavaScript, and steps that basically describe what the script is doing with all the code inside it. So this is a very meaningful reference. I really advise checking that. Right now I'm going to cover one of these examples. So let's go to this page. Let's see. So what I did over here is just I clicked on this link. I will just manually do that, and then I have the click on generate button. So as you can see, we have the various identification methods over here. Again, I'm focusing on XPath right now, not because it's better, only because I want to make sure that you understand how it works. So TruClient basically provide suggestions for XPath expressions. You don't need to do that manually on your own. So you can see that there are two XPath expressions over here. One is very good, and actually, since it's unique in this page, sometimes if you have a unique ID or some identification, sometimes XPath might be even better to use, because it will be a bit faster, not much faster, maybe in tens of or I don't know, 20, 30 milliseconds faster than the electors, but it still is a bit faster, and you see what is being searched for. So this is the first XPath expression that TruClient recorded, and the second one is not that good, because as you can see, this XPath expression, it really depends on the structure of this document. And if this button is not going to be located under the third div in this page, and a developer will decide to move it to a different area in the page, your script will be broken as a result. So the second XPath expression is not one that I would use in my scripts, at least. The first one is legit. As you can see, if I'm highlighting the element, it is being highlighted. This is my method for checking if the object is being identified or not. A lot of time I'm seeing customers complaining about object not found. So in most cases that I've seen, like majority of the cases, probably 90% of the cases, the issue is not related to object identification. The issue is related to something else. Maybe when I clicked on this link, this page was not loaded properly, or loaded with a different context. The button didn't appear altogether. Like, for example, if I'm trying to log in and I'm being rejected for a valid reason, the application rejected me, but since the end event of a step was document loaded, and a document was really loaded, only not the one that you expected to, so obviously the script, the step will succeed, because what we do is just navigating, the document was loaded, some document was loaded, not the one that you expect to, and then TruClient tries to perform a click on some UI element. That element doesn't appear on screen, and then this step fails because the target object was not found. The target object was not found doesn't necessarily mean that we have an object identification issue. We might have a different issue, and this is in the majority of the cases. So again, getting back to how to use object identification and how to basically manipulate it. So in this case, I would say that I would always prefer this type of XPath expressions. And let's say that what I want to do is actually I don't want to click on a button with this caption specifically. Let's say that this caption might change, and it's not going to necessarily be generate. It might be a different text. So in order to handle dynamic value, something that you don't know in advance, you can do that in this. You cannot do that from actually manipulating the XPath expression specifically. You need to switch to JavaScript. By default, when you switch to JavaScript, in this case, I already prepared the code. I apologize for that. Let me restore it to the original state. So the original state is something like that. I have the XPath expression, and in here I will have this expression, I believe. Yep. Okay, so let's try to highlight. No, not good. We have text and that, and probably that. Oops, sorry, a glitch. Let me select that object from scratch. Change to JavaScript. And this is how it looks like. So I apologize. You see that the subtleties of these things. So if you need to work with a dynamic XPath expression, you want to parameterize that. So you need to basically modify it using this value, eval XPath. So let's say that I'm capturing a value somewhere else in my script, not using that, but using a generic object identification step, a generic object step. I'm taking this button, and what I do is just I'm changing the action from click to get property. When I get the property, I need to specify which property I'm interested in. In this case, I'm interested in the visible text. So I'm taking the visible text and I'm saving it in a variable. So I'm saving it over here. I have this button text saved in here. Now, when I'm going to this statement and I want to use this value, I need to basically do something like that. Paste this value over here. And do that. And as you can see, written below with a minor issue, it is mentioned to use args context prefix arg context, while in fact it should be args context. So this is a bug that we fixed, and this way I can actually access that value. Let's see. In order to get the text right now saved into this variable, I'm just playing this step. and I have this value saved in here. Now, when I'm highlighting, I can see that this value, this identification is actually working. So there are many times that I see users asking questions in the forums, in the various forums, about how can I do correlation in TruClient. TruClient doesn't require correlation. What I did right now is the closest thing to correlation, because let's say that this value would be dynamic, then I would probably get this text from here, and then let's say that I need to use it in a different page. This text, I need to use it in a different page. It is being done in the same way. Like, for example, if you logged into some application and your username appears on screen, and then you need to go to a different page and click on an element that contains your username. And different virtual users will have different username over there. So this is how you do that. You just select that element on screen, save, change the action to get property, choose the relevant property, save this data into a variable, and then whatever section in the script, you can actually use that in different identification methods, not necessarily in XPath only. I mean, in this context of evaluation of XPath, you can also use it in JavaScript identification and descriptors. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is when you do something like that, you need to add args context prefix. Like, just in order to make sure that you understand that this part with the args context, if I'm going to access this button text variable from here, and I'm going to do something like that, still have it in my clipboard, and I'm going to do something like that, I don't need to use args context prefix. I already have it in memory, so I don't need to rerun everything. This is critical. I mentioned that also in the previous meeting. You don't need to rerun your script all over again. Leverage the fact that TruClient enables you to work interactively. Just make sure that that the state of what you're doing is appropriate. So in here, we already replayed this step. We have this value kept in memory. We can actually use it. So when I replay that, I didn't use args context. The reason for that is because I'm accessing this variable from the arguments section. When you access a variable from the argument section, you don't need to add that prefix before. But when you do that from the object identification section, then you do. It's kind of letting TruClient, it's kind of something technical implementation in TruClient. It's basically to let TruClient know that we are accessing a variable which is saved in the arguments section, something like that. Okay, so this is an example of how to work with dynamic XPath expressions. Let's also see what happens if I'm just, let's delete this step. And let's add a new one. And let's say that I don't want to rely on TruClient. I don't believe them. So I'm just picking an arbitrary element on screen, not necessarily the one that I want to interact with. I can go to the same page. Let's copy this URL in Chrome, and I can open the developer tools, and I want to highlight using the Chrome developer tools. I highlight this button. I see that this is the button element. right click, copy XPath, and then from the object section, changing that to XPath. You see that this is the XPath that TruClient chose right now. For some reason we have I'm sorry. This is the image XPath, not a very good one if I'm repeating what I mentioned earlier. Now I want to just paste the XPath that Chrome gave us and replacing that image. And as you can see, the object is being identified. The XPath that you got here from Chrome is not good, but I'm showing that in order to make sure that you know that this is a possibility. But whenever you see an XPath which relies on the structure of the document, don't use it unless you really don't have any other choice. And I find it hard to believe that there are no other choices. Okay, so I'm closing this script. Let's move on. Don't have a lot of time, unfortunately. I'm going to quickly go over descriptors. So let's replay this script. I deliberately disabled all these steps. It's kind of a backup step. Let's see how a descriptor looks like out of the box. So I'm just dropping a generic object action step, and I'm choosing an element. And when I'm choosing this element, I'm going to modify the identification to descriptors. Let's highlight. It works. Let's see how it looks like. So a descriptor is, each descriptor is a line in here. This descriptor is the descriptor for tag name with some value. So this link, for example, is actually a list item element. Its text is equals to link 1. This is an example. So this is what is being recorded or spied out of the box. You don't need to. Oftentimes, you don't really need to modify that. The descriptors editor allows you to do a lot of different stuff. It's not very clear from here that it's possible, and we fixed that in version 14, yet to be released. But you can actually modify the property or attribute that you are currently focused on. You can apply different operations on different elements, on different attributes. Different attributes supports different operators that you can use in order to manipulate what we're seeing in here. Let's do something like that. For example, instead of having this all text, I would like to identify this element only with the text that it starts with. So I'm just deleting that right now, and I want to check if that works. So I'm still on the same element that I identified earlier. Let's see what happens if I'm just removing one as well. Removing one, I get a very nice visual view. That will obviously not work during replay, because during replay TruClient has to work on a single element, and right now we have a uniqueness issue. And for this reason, this element is not going to be identified, obviously. So how can you control that? Let's do something like that. I want to choose ordinal. So I don't have a uniqueness, so I would like to create a uniqueness. So I'm choosing the second element. How did I know that this element is the second one and not the first one? Because obviously in the user interface it looks as if it's supposed to be the first one, because I tried it earlier. And what happened when you do that is some hidden element that you don't really see, which has the same description it also starts with a value link. It is being highlighted. So in order to choose the one that I'm interested in, I'm just choosing this one. In version 12.53, we have introduced the ability to select a random element. So this is very easily done. All I need to do is just like characterize some of the element, how it looks like, and I have to check this checkbox over here to use a random ordinal. And now whenever I'm going to highlight the object, a different element, as you can see, this very small, tiny thing. So right now, and so on. So this is a very easy method for if you need to choose. Let's see what happens if I want to, for example, identify an element from a value that I captured earlier, just what I did before. So drop in generic object action step. I'm choosing this link1.zip. I'm choosing again get property, just what I did earlier. So it doesn't, like what I did, this method is actually, it's the same for any identification. So you don't really need to do it only or specifically for XPath expressions. And now I want to identify that object using link text. Okay, so what do I need to do for that? I'm opening the developer tools for the Firefox browser, and I want to pick this element in order to characterize, to understand what type of element it is. And right now I see that it's type of a link, A element. So let's open this descriptor, and instead of tag name list item, I'm changing that to tag name A, and I would like the text to be equal to the value that I chose earlier. So I'm just switching from, because I'm going to use a JavaScript variable over here, I have to switch this toggle from plain text to JavaScript. These toggles that you see near argument fields and fields like that was done in order to improve performance and to avoid evaluating JavaScript expressions whenever we try to get a value in JavaScript. And this is the TruClient runs in a JavaScript engine of the browser. Any JavaScript expression needs to be evaluated. It costs some time in CPU, and obviously this is something that we would like to avoid. So we've by default most of the arguments or the fields are marked as plain, unless you would like to do some more complex stuff like we are doing right now. So I'm just again using the same prefix args context, and I'm using this link text, and I would like to uncheck this ordinal because it's less relevant for me right now. And I want to see if I capture that. No, I didn't. Why? Because I probably didn't run this step, and this variable is not initialized yet. Let's try right now, and now it works. Okay, so this is how you can work with dynamic values. In here, I can run complete iteration over the DOM to search for a specific value of this attribute. Note that I will show it shortly. Maybe I won't have time to recreate it all over again right now because time is running out. But in this case, when you write a JavaScript code, eventually its goal is to return a value that is relevant for that particular descriptor. Okay. I can also, if needed, let's do one last example with descriptors. Again, I'm dropping a generic object action step. I'm just choosing some element on screen, okay? Deliberately not what I would like to search for later. The reason for that is because I would like to avoid creating dual references for the same element in the TruClient test object repository. I mentioned earlier that TruClient doesn't create two instances of the same element in our test object repository. Sometimes, like if you already have a step that interact with a specific element in the UI, and you create another step, and then you modify the identification method for the newly created step, but these two steps are referencing to the same element, then TruClient will basically apply the changes in the identification method for these two steps, because the active identification method of an element is part of its description. Basically, this is how it works in TruClient. So if you have two steps that interact with the same element, the two of them will use the same identification method. Now right now we have a descriptor. I didn't change it yet, I think. Here is the descriptor for this image. Let's see how it looks like. Tag name image. Okay, I want to change that to something completely different. Let's do that, for example. So I have a div class item list. So I'm changing div. I need to change also this descriptor because it's not relevant. So I'm changing this alternative to a class. I can filter this way, and then I'm editing, and I'm adding item list. I'm sorry, item dash list. This class into the over here, and now I have basically, you can see that in here it still describes the role as image element, but in fact I'm pointing on a different element right now, which is not something with user oriented, but still when I click on highlight, the element is being identified. So the initial role, the name, are just some kind of representation for you guys to view, to get some description on the element. When I use descriptors or XPath or JavaScript, I can change the entire identification to look at something completely different. And you see that this is how I did it over here. I can also add a complete, like if you have some custom attribute which is not listed in this list, you can add it over here. Add new attribute or property, and then we will ask you for the property name, and you will be able to use this editor with all these operators and values and so on to identify this element. So the descriptors is a very flexible identification method. It allows both like out of the box, it provides out of the box description of the element, and you can parameterize that and do whatever you want, as you can see. And the most important thing is that it doesn't require you to learn XPath or JavaScript, which is a bit more technical, I would say. In here, all you have to do is basically to spy for the element that you need in case you need to do the more extreme stuff, I would say. In most cases, you will not have to do that as well. Okay, one last example, and I apologize for being late. I think it's going to be interesting and worthwhile looking at. So I prepared another example. In here, I will probably, come on, I will probably not reiterate it. I did it this morning. Again, browsing to the same page, and let's see what I did over here. Okay, so let's say that what I want to do is I want to locate this element, the links 1.zip, what I did earlier. Only that I want to do it with the JavaScript. So we saw earlier an example with JavaScript, but when we actually evaluate an XPath expression because we needed to parameterize the value or to work with the dynamically captured value from that we took earlier. So in this case, I don't want to do that in descriptors or in XPath. Actually, there is no much sense in doing that in JavaScript because TruClient provide the means to do it also with those methods. But just in case you feel comfortable with it. So honestly speaking, I'm not a JavaScript developer and I don't know JavaScript. When I have to do this kind of exercise, I'm going to Google and I'm looking for JavaScript. You see that I already have in the cache get link text, how to iterate over elements. This is why I would like to interact with the link. I know that right now this is the link. Maybe next time that I will go to this page, the value in here is going to be different, or would like to select a random element in here or something else. So, but I would like to do it with JavaScript. So what I do is just looking in Google how to iterate over DOM elements. Maybe will give me a better thing. Okay, so here you can see Stack Overflow. This is the most, it's the best place to copy code from, actually. So I'm looking for an example, and I see that. You see, you get a collection of elements, document, get elements by tag name, give your tag name, and loop over it. So this is what I did over here. Again, due to lack of time, I'm not going to reiterate that. I'm going to just explain what I did. So I just did a copy paste from Stack Overflow, very simple. I changed the tag name to what I wanted because I knew that I want to interact with links, and links, their tag name is A. So I saved that into a links collection. Now, in order to actually get some object identified, I initialized a return object initially to null, because maybe I will not find what I want. And then I just make an iteration on this collection, and this is how it is written. Okay, like links collection.length. I don't want to go over a link that is not really needed. I added to myself a debug alert over here, just in order to see whether I'm reaching into the right thing. I'll replay that shortly in order for you to see that. And then for each element in this collection, I want to interact with its inner HTML, and whenever I'll find a link that its value is link.zip, links1.zip, then I would like to break this loop because I found what I want. So I actually store the element. Pay good attention. I'm not storing the value. I don't care about the text itself. I need the element. So the element is actually this element right now. I store it over here, break the loop, and just make sure that I think that it will work even without this additional statement, because this is the last value. But this code over here is the last statement in the code. Is TruClient will treat that as the object. Okay, whether it makes sense or not. I mean, if you will just write in here something, I don't know, window, then TruClient will refer to the window as the element. So I'm just writing an empty line over here, and this is my element actually. Note, I don't need to scope that in a function or anything. I saw cases where people did something like that, function, and did scope that and did something like return. You don't need to do that. It's not supposed to be scoped with a function or anything. Just write your code like that. So let's see how this one looks like. You see, right now, because I have an alert over there, so I start getting the inner HTML for elements in here. See examples, links, tables, selectable. These are all sorts of links that appear on this page. And right now I reach into my element. So the loop is broken and this file is being downloaded. We might cover how to download the file in the next session, not sure. But this is how you basically use JavaScript code in here. Like I did previously, I can take this value out of here, do that args context dot my link, and take this value, let's say in here. Right now I'll do that in here. You can also grab this value from the application itself. I will just define here my link equals to this value. Now in order to, let me just remove this alert before I replay that again. I'm just initializing this variable by actually replaying this step, and then I'm going to highlight, and I have an issue. What is this issue? My link over here, args context my link. Not sure. I'm not going to troubleshoot it right now, but trust me, it can be done. And since we are way behind schedule, so I returned the speaking permission to Lior. I hope the session was beneficial. You will get the slides with the reference to the examples as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shlomi. And again, we'd like to apologize for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning, but part of live demonstration, part of life. We hope you still got the benefit from this presentation. Again, let me just remind you of our TruClient LinkedIn group and the performance engineering community in the HPE Software Forum communities. Like I said, next sessions will be advanced scripting techniques, July 28th, and our final session, troubleshooting, at August 2nd. Any questions you still have, please feel free to email them either to us, to myself personally, or to plv_cost@hpe.com, and we will make sure that you receive the answers you need. So thank you for taking the time and joining us here today. You will be receiving the recording during the course of next week, along with the Q&A session. So thank you all. Bye bye. Have a great day.